This is lesson 2.4. There's some IXL practice under B1. It's about addition and subtraction number stories. And here's some mental math. I did some examples, and then you try the examples on this page. To practice expanded form with decimals. So you do the numbers in front of the decimal just like you always did. In this case it's easy because it's just a 7. And then you start the next line. We're expanding it. Expand means pull apart with a decimal, because as soon as you see a decimal, all the rest of the answer parts that are pulled apart have to have a decimal in them. So you tell what to put in the first spot, a 1, 1/10. Then you tell what to put in the second spot. Here's how I like to think of it. There's 2 spots. The 2 has to go in the second spot. And then you hold a spot with a 0. Each row can only have one number that's not a 0. So that helps me to pull it apart. Excuse me. Let's do the next number. Pull the numbers in front of the decimal apart. When you see the decimal, the next row, start with the decimal. There's no number in the first spot, so we can skip that. And then there's the 1 in the second spot, 100th. So if we put those all back together, we'd end up with that number. Let's try the last one. (28 and 69/100ths). Pull the numbers in front of the decimal apart. Then you get to the decimal, so you gotta have a decimal in there. What's in the first spot? 6, 6/10. Second spot is a 9. Hold this spot with a 0. If you put them all back together, they'd add up to 28 and 69/100ths. We'll do an example of using a form to fill this in. And then we'll write a number model for it, reminding you that number models need relation symbols, which are less than, greater than, or equal to, and they need an operation symbol, which is add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Here's some important facts about number sentences. They're similar in language to regular sentences, but they use numbers. I always like to think of it as, instead of a reading sentence, it's a math sentence, and math sentences use numbers and relation symbols and operations. Some number sentences are true and some are false. So here's some examples here. 10 minus 2 equals 8 is true, but 8 divided by 2 is greater than 4 times 100. So 8 divided by 2 would be 4, and that would not be greater than 100. So that's a false statement. Number sentences that contain a variable are called open number sentences. Open number sentences are neither true or false, and only when you replace the variable. The variable is the letter, so it depends on what you put into the letter. Do we get a number sentence that is either true or false? A number sentence must have a relation symbol. Here's an example. N plus 4 equals 8. The relation symbol is equal, and the plus is the operation. Number sentences also contain numbers and operation symbols. We're going to practice sharing some number sentences. It does not have to be with your partner. So on page 226, there's some diagrams that can help us with used in the past. There's total with part, and there's some other examples here. So on page 242 and 243 of your student reference book, it talks about some of these. These are types of situations: parts and total, So they're just basically diagrams you can use to solve the problem. You use whichever one works at the time. Here's some more examples. And here's some how it's working for some people. You've got the problem, the number sentence, and the expression. Here's another example. Here's what they look like again. And we're going to use this to do some problem solving practice. It says the steps are to understand the problem. Basically, that's reading the problem. Make a plan of what to do. Carry out the plan and look back and see if it makes sense. Did it answer the question you wanted it to answer? So here's some story problems to try using that guide. And we'll do that on the notebook. There's the steps again. And this is the way we're going to use it to practice. We'll use this problem to practice. Here's an example of a story problem and filling in the information using this chart. So the story problem is Mrs. Snow is 49 years old. Her son Kevin is celebrating his 24th birthday today. Mr. Snow is 6 years older than Mrs. Snow. How old was Mrs. Snow when Kevin was born? I like to fill in the what do you need to find because it made me think about which numbers I needed and which ones I didn't. So what we need to find is how old is Mrs. Snow? So I'm going to highlight that up here. I'm going to just mark underneath it. So that's what we need to find. How old was Mrs. Snow when Kevin was born? What numbers are needed? So we need to know that she's 49 years old. And Kevin's celebrating his 24th birthday, so we need that. Mr. Snow is 6 years older than Mrs. Snow. That has nothing to do with our question. So I'm not going to write the 6. We need to find out how old she was when he was born. So we're going to take the 49 because we know she's 49 now. And he's 24. So we're going to subtract the 24. Open number sentence. It needs a variable or a letter. So we would have to put a letter there. 49 minus 24 equals n. So if we subtract that, we will get our answer. Does that make sense? Our last step is checking if that makes sense. Here's how they're going to have you do these in your journal, in your math journal. So I'm going to do a couple examples for you. So it says Regina has $23.08. Her sister has $16.47. Her brother has only $5. How much more money does Regina have than her sister? I always like to start with what's the question because it helps me think about the problem. So I'm going to start with B first. I'm going to get the highlighter and I'm going to highlight the question, which is how much more money does Regina have than her sister? So that would go in B because it wants to know what we want to find out. And then it says to list the numbers we need in the problem. So I'm going to go back and go through the numbers. So she has this, so we need that. Her sister has this, we need to know about her sister. Her brother has 5, but the question's not about her brother. So these would go in the ones that are circled would go here, and the numbers you need. Then we have to write an open sentence, so it doesn't have an answer yet. So we're going to be subtracting because the question was how much more. So we're going to take 23.08 minus 16.47. We're going to subtract that. And then our solution and answer would be 661, because when you subtract that, that's your answer. Put my dollar sign. Let's do one more problem. I'm going to get my highlighter to find the question. Let me erase a little bit of this first, so get it out of the way. So this question is, Lucas was making breakfast for 12 friends. He started with 19 eggs. He bought one more dozen eggs. How many eggs did he have to cook for breakfast? So let's find our question. I'm going to highlight that. So the question is, how many eggs did he have to cook for breakfast? I had to think about this one a minute, because I kept trying to make it about his friends, and it really isn't about his friends, because it just wants to know how many eggs he cooked. So I'm going to get rid of that number, because it doesn't ask how many they each ate or anything. So the numbers I need are, he had 19 eggs and then a dozen. So we're going to add those, because we're finding out how many he cooked altogether, and he cooked all those eggs. So those are the numbers we need to solve the problem, the ones that are circled. We described what he wanted to find. The open sentence is going to be 19 plus 12, because we're finding out how many he cooked in all. So add that up and get your answer. So 9 plus 2 would be 1. 1 plus 1 plus the one I carried would be 3. So he cooked 31 eggs. In sentences, I forgot to put the variable, which you need. So like on the egg problem, it should have had 19 plus 12 equals n, or another letter. It's your turn to try. So on your math journal, pages 37 and 38, there's some of these to practice. Go ahead and do your work and take a picture of it to show you've done your work. There's also some math boxes, so you can do those. If I send you a Google form, do it in the Google form. Otherwise, just do it on your paper and take a picture.